Yes, only last week we celebrated the 40th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations with the UAE. So it's almost 50 years. But especially in the last 2 decades, I believe our relations with the UAE have improved so much more, especially in the field of economics. Recently, we signed the investment protection promotion agreement. We believe that this would be really helpful in having more investment ties between Philippines and the UAE. Yes, and also where I think it's been announced during the expo that the UAE and the Philippines are starting negotiations on the comprehensive economic partnership agreement. This will, of course, once it's signed, further bolster our economic ties. So for the benefit of our peoples. Oh yes, we welcome all these initiatives of the UAE government, especially when it comes to tolerance. It's I know it's a very big factor and priority of the UAE government, especially as it is host to many nationalities, including Filipinos. I think we're the third or fourth biggest foreign nationals who are here in the UAE. And recently, during the celebration of our Independence Day, the event organized by the Filipino community here in Dubai, the Minister for Tolerance, Sheikh Nayan bin Mubarak Al Nayan, was there to especially congratulate our countrymen and recognize the contribution that our fellow Filipinos have given to the UAE, their role in the success and progress of this country. So certainly the numbers of Filipinos here in the UAE is an important aspect of our relations, and of course the UAE government's tolerance and hospitality to our not just to Filipinos but all other nationalities who are here to work and be part of this really progressive nation. Yes, we would love that. Like I said, there are many Filipinos here, professionals, and those who are in the service sector who have been here for many years and have made a name for themselves. In fact, and of course the frontline workers, the UAE government, I know, have recognized their presence and also their contribution in not just the numbers of the frontline workers in working in hospitals and other important industries, which was instrumental in the UAE um, managing the pandemic quite well. And so we have lots of nurses, architects, engineers who are, for many decades been not just practicing their profession, but being, I think, role models for our younger generation who want to uh, make a name for themselves, including the designers, for example. I mean, that's a huge thing for us that some of our fashion designers based here in the UAE are making such a have become such a big success, not just in the UAE but globally. So, and then apart from those are like the people who work in restaurants, hotels, and other. So we would love that for example, the host government, you know, show also the that they're, of course, very much welcome here. As far as our bilateral trade is concerned, it's I think back on track. It's now last year, our total bilateral trade was at $1.2 billion. So we import more from the UAE. So these are crude oil and petroleum products. And then as far as our exports to the UAE, they are mostly electronic components and some agricultural products like fresh fruits, for example, pineapples and bananas. Um, and so there was a big drop in the bilateral trade during the previous 2 years, 2020 and 2021. So, but we think there's a upward trend as far as bilateral trade is concerned. And investments, there are more and more direct investments from the UAE in the Philippines, in all in many industries, for example, like renewable energy and all other industries.